So when it comes to like more simplified textures, the primary thing that comes to mind is putting a picture on something, poster, photograph, like just put a thing on a plane. Um, and that's one way to do it. But there is also another use for this kind of simpler way of things. It requires a little bit of UV mapping, but otherwise is painless. So what we're going to do is I'll save this scene, and we're going to open up a new one and save it right away because I have bad luck with these things. That's not where we save it. That's not where we save this. Scenes. All right, so tuning textures. So people have been asking me things like, how do I do grass? Well, it depends on what we want the grass to look like. And depending on what we want the grass to look like, it might be that we want it to look, like grass waving in the wind. That requires particles, and we are not there. So there are other ways to add certain kinds of effects to things, especially if you're in a more like cartoony, um, simplified kind of setting. So I am going to create a plane here to work with. We're gonna rotate it up 90 degrees. We're gonna move it up. All right, we're gonna pretend that grid is the ground. I don't feel like making the ground right now. And our subdivision's height does not need to be 10. That's excessive. 4. There we go. Nice little strip of grass we're gonna make. All right, cool. So we're gonna call this grass. I'm real creative with my names today. So save. Now right click, assign new material. Grass we're gonna make not flat, not blend. Let's go with a fungy. Now this is not going to look like actual grass. I cannot stress enough that this is not going to look like for real grass. But we're going to use a little bit of Photoshop tricks. So in order to get started, we need a roadmap. So we need to do an actual UV map of this stuff. We can't skip that step. Not for the way we did it with the photos and the paintings and whatever. We can't do it here. So I got to go to my workspace and say UV editing. And that's what it looks like. If I start this off crooked one more time, I'm gonna be mad. This is a me problem, but basically I keep getting it backwards, or I keep rotating this thing wrong. Basically, see all these subdivisions. Oh no, I didn't get backwards. I get back and forth backwards sometimes. There should be more divisions this way than up and down. Oh yeah, I thought I got it backwards again. All right, but you can look at this and see this doesn't look like this at all. These are all really tall and these are supposed to be kind of short, and we need to map it properly. UV maps by default, when they're planar like this, are gonna try and fill this whole thing. Cool. We need to tell it not to because that's a dumb move on its part. So we go up to UV and then planar. So planar works, pretty much everything we're doing in this class is planar projection because we're working with simple things, but we have to go to these settings because if I just do it like this, oh, well, my settings are already changed. Yours would not be properly done. Yours would look like this. The default projection is to project like this and look down. That doesn't help us though. We need to go to UV, planar, go to the options, Z-axis in my case. If you're wondering what particular direction we should go in, turn on the move tool and see what arrow is sticking out from the surface. Not up, not across, out. The blue one, that's a Z-axis. Also, make sure you have keep image width to height ratio. If you don't do that, then it just gives you what was already there. All right, so we hit apply. And what we should see over here should look exactly like what's over here. Lots of dead space, yes, I know, but that's okay. All right. So now we have to get this image out of Maya and into Photoshop. And I keep hitting save because I'm recording my screen and I'm worried it's going to crash. So we need to, there's a couple different ways, but we're going to go to Image, UV Snapshot. And it should, you know, I set my project and it doesn't listen. So I'm going to set my project again. It should go right to the right folder. If it doesn't go to the right folder, set your project. I'm getting very frustrated with my projects not working. Stand by. So my best guess is it's wrong because I've manually changed it in the past. And so it's like, oh, we don't want to follow the rules. So my only other option is to maybe try closing out of Maya and going back in. So I'm going to try that real quick. Found the problem. So it is because I manually changed things. So I must have, you know, manually changed where this was going. But if you go to Edit, Reset Settings, it will put it back to what should be your default folder, because it should be whatever folder you're working in, Images, and then it calls it UV Out, and then you can say UV Out grass. So it's usually anything coming out of this program goes into the Images folder. It's called Out UV, and then I tag it with whatever it's supposed to be. It defaults to Maya IFF. No, thank you. JPEGs will be fine. This is your resolution. So we can change it to anything we want, really. And yes, it should be locked into place. It is unfortunate that I can't. There's gonna be a lot of dead space in this. That's just the name of the game. Excuse me. So we're gonna hit apply and close, and that should. I go into my images folder. Haha. Fear not, we will make this easier to look at. So now I can open this in Photoshop. And as I wait for this to open, we're gonna have to do a couple of things to prep this image. Again, what we're trying to do is it's never going to be as simple as the other thing. I unlock the background layer. I hit Control I to invert it because white on black does not work for me. I set it to multiply. And then I lock this layer again because we're going to leave it on top. And then I make a new layer. If you need that repeated, watch it again. But your UV layer should be locked. You will not touch it. And then this layer is where you're actually going to be drawing stuff. I'm going to choose a grassy kind of color real quick. And I'm going to go searching through my brushes for something grass-like. Stand by. So, because I'm being cheeky, we're going to use the actual grass brush, because why not? Just for the sake of argument. So this is a brush that looks like grass. It's silly and ridiculous, but there it is. So I've turned up the size of it a little bit. It's not actually meant to be this big. You can see that the resolution on it's a little shaky. So I need to like find a size that works. Also note that it doesn't matter what goes on underneath here. You can run tests on stuff and leave it there. You won't see it. This will never show up. This will. So if I draw a bit of grass. Oh, I'm just kidding, that looks ridiculous. Dune grass, much better. And I've got it kind of, it cuts off a little bit, which I probably shouldn't do. I should probably center this. There we go. And we can always kind of move this along later. So that's one option. I'm going to show a couple different options, including hand drawing stuff. But when we come in here, I draw that in. I make sure it's doing what I want it to. Technically speaking, what comes in will be this. So there won't be a white background. So when I'm done, I should make sure this is invisible. I don't want these, that stuff coming in. But instead of hitting save, I'm going to hit File, Save As. Call this in UV. And I have to go out one and go into the source images folder. So where you save your textures when you're done is actually the source images folder, because that's where you're going to attach them in Maya. So I'm going to go to my grass shader, because we already applied a shader on here, where it says color. I click this, I go to File. When I click this, it should automatically go to my source images. And I say in UV grass. And then I hit 6 on the keyboard. We're half there. So there's the picture of the grass. But obviously, what? Standby. I saved it. Yes, I did save it. Oh, okay, yeah, no, it's not. It shows the UVs in here, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, the UVs shouldn't be there, but that's just the UV editor. The trick to this is that if you have something with all this transparency coming in from Photoshop, you have to attach it to the color and the transparency. So I got to click the checkerboard for transparency, go to File, go to here, and apply the exact same thing. And probably, I forgot, make this a Lambert, because only Lambert. You can't turn the specular. I always forget. You can't turn the specular off. And so now you have some grass, but it's 2D grass. So if you've got like a really, flat area, then you can probably have some kind of 2D grass. And you can, by the way, stagger them to get kind of the effect of lots of grass. And yes, the edges are not great because we can see things. So I'm doing this very quickly so you don't have to watch me putz around in Photoshop. But the reality is I would have to come into Photoshop with an eraser tool, which I have somewhere. Go to the right layer, turn this down, and fix those edges so that we didn't just have blades of grass like cutting off for no reason. And I can actually hit save right here. And Maya will, I should only have to reload it for one of them. Reload. Aha, and it saw it for all of them. I did a better job on this side than I did on this side, but now the edges look way less stupid. And depending on the direction you want your scene rendered from, you can maybe get these to work in the right pattern. Now this is almost too close to being like, I don't want to say real grass, but it's almost a little bit, there we go. It's almost a little bit too naturalistic to be doing this. So this type of thing, you can have flat shots like this, like a truck shot, or you can kind of pan in a bit, but tumbling around wouldn't really work unless you did some camera shenanigans. We're not even doing any camera stuff. So you can pick, the angle you'd like it to be seen from in some ways and have it work like that. The other trick there's a lot of other tricks. One of them is to not have the exact same thing for all of them. So I can say File, Save As, and grass 2. I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to turn another layer on. I'm going to grab my brush again. I'm going to change my settings a little bit. So it's a different shade of grass. You can also, by the way, if you whatever brush you're using, if it's like randomized like this, all these scattering things, color dynamics, I'm going to turn the color dynamics way off, way down. I might turn it off even. Foreground, background jitter. There it is. So instead of going to white, I can tell it to go to this like burnt orange color. Ooh, there we go. Yeah, much better. Where am I putting this? I don't know. There it is. Fix this edge a little bit. There it is. This is called 2, so I can hit save, and then in here, I would have to apply a new material. Again, Lambert, because we can't have it be shiny. And so I can't, if I change this on Lambert 2, I have to, it won't work because it'll change it for all of them. So remember, your shaders are not unique to each individual one. Your shaders are the same across every one of these things. Oh, I didn't turn this off before I saved. Go here, reload. There we go. Now that I have that set up, I can turn, this one from Lambert 2 into Lambert 3, and it'll follow everything. So existing Lambert 3. There it is. So you got 2 that are more orange, 2 that are more green. Adds a lot of depth. Again, you can't get super close. Like, there's a resolution problem. This is not, you don't stare at it like that. It's not going to animate. I want to be clear. This is like a cartoony cheat. It's not going to animate. All right. Now there is also another way to do this. Let me go back to here. We're gonna hide all these. JK. We're gonna hide most of them, but we're gonna make a duplicate. Remove. There it is. Because there is other way to do this, and I do not have my tablet set up, so you're gonna witness some epic drawing skills. But we're gonna call this. We're gonna save it. It's gonna be not grass like this. UV grass drawn. We're gonna erase. Turn this on so we can know what the heck is happening. Get rid of the extra layer. And we're going to, with a regular brush, just draw something. Would help if I had an actual brush on and not the eraser. It would also help if I knew what my brushes looked like. All right, I lied. I set up my tablet because I'm helpless without it. So I'm gonna go to our brush. So you can also do, instead of these like wispy brush strokes or whatever, we can also set up like clumps of cartoony grass. So I can sit here. I haven't really chosen how I want this to go yet. There we go. So, oh, it's being very slow because I am recording my screen. All right. When in doubt, check your tablet settings. But you can also, because we're getting so abstract, you can draw in your own textures. So you can draw in a texture like this. Oh, let me save that. Or you can even use this for, if we change this to something other than grass, we can use this to draw, let me get the colors I had back. Even in flat 2D stuff like I don't know, a hedgerow or something. So Pardon me as I try to remember what on earth a hedge looks like. There we go. Oh, it really doesn't want to draw while I'm recording. All right, so got nice little hedges with a few little flowers in there, something. You can bring in not only something that is meant to look like a bit like a texture, but you can straight up bring in cartoony style images. And that doesn't need to be there. So I can then go in, new material, Lambert, color, file, call this drawn, there we go. And as long as I also do that for the transparency, as long as I save it properly in Photoshop without the UVs on it, because that's going to happen a lot, especially with me. Reload. There it is. So I've got this like cartoony-ish hedgerow that could go in front of my house. Again, a postcard in space. Not meant to be seen volumetrically. But if you're thinking that's necessary, you haven't watched South Park or anything like it. So there's a lot of times where people will bring in 2D textures like this. Now we're off way in the deep end in terms of cartooniness and things like that. A far cry from what we had going on earlier, which was, kind of an attempt at something volumetric. But these are the two ways you can bring in like a 2D texture that can replace, in effect, you can do cloud effects like this. If you grab in Photoshop, a slice of something, and then you draw a cloud instead of my pickle bush that I have there, then you can draw the clouds with white paint because they're going to be up in the sky where there is nothing currently, right? There's a lot of options. You could draw some puffy white clouds that go up there, and as long as you paint them better than I just did there, they'll show up in the sky. And you layer a few of them and you get a nice background look, especially since it would be in the background, because this holds up. I mean, if I had more of them, this holds up pretty well when you're far away. The problem is if you get very, very close. So if you're wanting some distant clouds in your background, I would also recommend this as an idea. All right, so this is the opposite of the, picture on a frame that we were looking at earlier. This is nothing like, regular texture mapping, although the same principle applies where you have to do a planar projection and then bring it into Photoshop in order to have your map to know where to paint. The only difference is here we're doing, cartoony drawings, right? Rather than painting something to look naturalistic. So there's a lot of different options there in terms of how you paint your textures onto your stuff.